One coach lasted 13 games before quitting like a coward breaking up by text. Another went 1-31 over 2 seasons and somehow got his contract extended. These coaching disasters destroyed franchises, wasted Hall of Fame talent, and created chaos that lasted for years. So today, we're going through the 21 worst coaching hires in NFL history. Starting with Bobby Petrino at 21, and he showed up in Atlanta in 2007 looking like the perfect hire. The guy had just gone 12-1 at Louisville and was this offensive genius who was supposed to unlock Michael Vick's potential. Atlanta handed him 5 years and $24 million to turn their franchise around. What they got instead was 13 games of chaos and the most cowardly exit you'll ever see. Before Petrino could even get going, Vick got slammed with federal dogfighting charges. Their franchise quarterback was gone and Petrino was stuck with Joey Harrington and Byron Leftwich. His offense crumbled, the team went 3-10, and veteran players were openly questioning everything he did. Then instead of facing his players like a man, Petrino left handwritten notes in their lockers. Not a team meeting, not even a phone call, notes. Like some teenager breaking up through text. The guy who was supposed to develop leaders couldn't even lead himself. He would later go on and take a position as head coach at the University of Arkansas, getting fired in 2011 for covering up an affair. But this next coach proved you can win 3 national championships and still be completely clueless in the NFL. Urban Meyer was supposed to be Jacksonville's savior. He had 3 titles at Florida and Ohio State, plus this huge reputation for building championship programs. The Jaguars handed him a 5-year deal worth $60 million, between $9 and $12 million per year. What they got was, pretty much the worst NFL coaching stint ever. The red flag started right away. According to one report, Meyer legitimately asked his staff, "Who's number 99 on the Rams?" You might think he was joking, but no, apparently not. Apparently knowing Aaron Donald, one of the most dominant defensive players in the history of the league, was overrated. It started with problematic decision-making. In the offseason, he hired strength coach Chris Doyle, who had just left the University of Iowa after 2 decades because of accusations of racism. He brought Tim Tebow in to play tight end. He would proceed with calling his assistants losers in meetings and threaten to fire players like he was still recruiting teenagers. You can't treat grown men with guaranteed contracts like college kids. Kicker Josh Lambo, one of the most accurate kickers in NFL history, publicly accused Meyer of kicking him in warm-ups before practice. When confronted, he said within earshot of the rest of the team, "I'm the head ball coach. I'll kick you whenever the f*** I want." He refused to address his specialists by name. Instead, he used their position, kicker, punter, long snapper, or reportedly flattering nicknames like scumbag and dipshit. Then came the bar incident. After a Thursday night loss, Meyer stayed in Ohio instead of flying home with his team. And this happens.
Another video has surfaced that appears to show Jaguars coach Urban Meyer in a provocative situation with a woman who is not his wife.
The 3-time national champion became a national joke overnight. By December, even owner Shad Khan, who was upon Meyer's hiring, was quoted saying, "This time I got it right," couldn't take it anymore. Meyer got canned at 2-11, leaving the franchise in complete ruins. Some coaches lose games, Meyer lost all respect, and in all fairness, he had it coming. Moving on to 19, and Steve Wilks arrived in Arizona with solid credentials. He was Ron Rivera's defensive coordinator in Carolina and had a reputation as a player's coach who could steady things after Bruce Arians retired. The Cardinals gave him a 4-year deal. He lasted 1 season. The 3-13 record says plenty, but the roster was gutted. He cycled through coordinators while fielding the league's worst offense. His defense dropped from 6th to 20th. They were getting blown out in pretty much every game. Then came the strangest moment, a late season win over Green Bay, which of course just hurt their draft position. When your bosses are mad, one mistake and you're done. Wilks was fired after 1 season. Whether he deserved more time is debatable, but no coach should deal with ownership rooting against him. But sometimes the opposite can be pretty bad too. After forcing out Jim Harbaugh, a coach that in 4 years had taken them to 3 straight NFC Championship games and 1 Super Bowl appearance, The 49ers felt needed a head coach. Instead of proven experience, 49ers owner Jed York promoted Jim Tomsula, their longtime defensive line coach. He knew the building and, most importantly, wouldn't challenge management. The problem showed immediately. Where Harbaugh commanded rooms, Tomsula looked like a substitute teacher who'd lost control. Pretty much every press conference became a stumbling mess. Players liked him as a position coach, but following him as the leader was another story. The 49ers went 5-11 in his only season. The offense had no identity, the defense regressed, and the team looked lost. York got the loyal soldier he wanted, just one drowning in a job he wasn't ready for. 24 hours after the season ended, Tomsula was gone. The substitute teacher experiment was over. Don't feel too bad for him though, the guy got paid $14 million just for failing that badly. What's worse than failing with a bad roster? Taking a champion and wrecking it from the inside. Ray Handley inherited the defending Super Bowl champs. Bill Parcells retired, leaving a loaded roster and winning culture. The Giants promoted their running backs coach, thinking continuity would keep the magic. Instead, the magic just evaporated. His biggest mistake was declaring a QB competition between Phil Simms, the longtime leader, and Jeff Hostetler. Simms had been the starter since 1979, but Handley wanted to impose his rules on the team. The move split the locker room and angered the vets. And the media, well, they pounced. Writers roasted Handley pretty much every day as the Giants tumbled from 15-3 to 8-8, then 6-10. Players tuned him out and the NFC East powerhouse became a punchline. After 2 wasted seasons, ownership pulled the plug. Handley never coached again. And I guess the Giants never learned because we're going right back to them for number 16. Joe Judge came from New England with Belichick's approval. A special teams coach turned head coach, he promised discipline and detail. Instead, New York got rambling pressers and one of the league's worst offenses. His teams were miserable to watch. They were 31st in offense and scored just 17.5 points per game in 2020 and 15.2 in 2021. Judge kept preaching about building the right way, but this was clearly not that. The low point? Against Washington, 3rd and 9 from their own 5, Judge called a QB sneak right in front of his own end zone. It looked like quitting in real time.
To be able to run a traditional play, I mean, I get the first one when you put yourself kind of backed up inside the 1 yard line.
I mean, this is sad.
He was fired at 10-23. All right, moving on to number 15 now, and we've got Freddie Kitchens, who had 8 games as offensive coordinator when Baker Mayfield looked awesome in the tail end of his rookie year. Convinced they'd found their Sean McVay, Cleveland promoted him. The 2019 roster was stacked. Mayfield, Beckham, Chubb, Garrett. The playoff hype was building for the first time in forever, but what they got was just pure chaos. The Browns had penalties all over the place and a bunch of players got ejected, even fighting on the sideline. The breaking point was Myles Garrett ripping off Mason Rudolph's helmet and swinging it at his head. Yeah, not a good look.
Well, he tackled Rudolph. Rudolph didn't like the way that he was tackled.
Oh, gosh. Oh, man. Oh, my goodness.
This was assault with a deadly weapon.
Yes.
So my initial reaction was, in all my years of watching and covering pro football, I've never been so shocked and so shaken by anything I've ever seen on a football field than I was by that.
Instead of calming things down, Kitchens just made it worse, wearing a Pittsburgh Started It shirt to a bar before their rematch. A head coach literally blaming opponents for his players' assault. The photo went viral. Cleveland finished 6-10 with a roster that should have performed a lot better. Kitchens was fired after 1 season, never getting another head coaching shot. But one guy who failed harder than that was Chip Kelly. Not in Philly, although that was pretty bad, but in San Francisco. Somehow he arrived with his rep still alive. The Oregon legend, the Eagles coach who started 20-12 before imploding. The 49ers gave him $24 million over 4 years, betting his up-tempo offense could jumpstart a rebuild. Instead, they tied their worst record in team history. his genius system collapsed instantly. The 49ers scored just 19.3 points a game while their defense got stuck on the field, gassing out all over the place. Players hated the pace, calling it exhausting and pointless. And to make things worse, Kelly just doubled down. By December, the 49ers had lost 13 straight. So understandably, San Francisco bailed. The innovator who promised to transform pro football proved that his crazy bag of college tricks don't work when pros just quit on you. But what happens when a college legend treats the NFL like a paid vacation? We're about to find out. Because at 13, we've got Steve Spurrier, who was pretty much college royalty. His fun and gun offense ruled Florida, and owner Dan Snyder threw $25 million at him to bring it to Washington. The only problem was, well, Spurrier didn't want to work anymore. The offense was awful from the start, but the bigger issue was Spurrier's attitude. While other coaches lived 16-hour days, he admitted he hoped the job would let him retire to the beach and play golf. After going 12-20, Spurrier just quit mid-contract, basically admitting he'd been cashing checks while phoning it in. At number 12, we've got Dennis Erickson, who wasn't even on the 49ers' radar when they fired Steve Mariucci. After a month-long search that went nowhere, they panicked and hired the ex-Seahawks coach with a 31-33 record. He inherited a playoff team with Jeff Garcia and Terrell Owens. Within a year, Garcia was benched, Owens was gone, and San Francisco crashed from contenders to bottom feeders. Year 2 was even uglier. The 49ers went 2-14, and Erickson fired both coordinators mid-season, desperately trying to survive. In 2 years, the franchise went from Garcia's playoff run to the second pick in the draft. Erickson finished 9-23. It's fair to say that the panic hire delivered panic, and not much else. Okay, let's move on to number 11, and we're going back to 1976 with this one, when Lou Holtz arrived in New York after 4 straight winning seasons at North Carolina State. Pretty good starting point, right? The Jets gave him 5 years. He lasted 13 games. The thing is, his offense demanded mobility Joe Namath no longer had at age 33. When that failed, Holtz turned to gimmicks. The low point was introducing a team fight song, expecting NFL vets to sing like frat brothers. The Jets stumbled to 3-10. With 1 game left, Holtz quit, famously saying, "God did not put Lou Holtz on this earth to coach in the pros." Great. Thanks, coach. Now we've got David Shula, and at 32 years old, he became the youngest head coach in NFL history. His last name opened doors, but also brought some pretty heavy pressure. Don Shula was already a legend by this point, and the Bengals hoped his son had the same magic. But his Bengals had no identity, and certainly no highlights. They went 19-52, never posting a winning season. In 1993, they scored just 187 points, just over 11 per game. The low point came in the Shula Bowl. Facing his father's Dolphins, the first time a father and son coached off against each other in the NFL, David got schooled on national TV and the cameras captured everything. The legend versus the disappointment. The Bengals fired him in 1996, and by that point he was the fastest coach to ever reach 50 losses. I guess you could say that the Shula name became more of a curse than a blessing. But we don't have to go so far back for this next one. Adam Gase's Jets intro press conference went viral for his bug-eyed stare. It's funny, but I bet fans knew it was doomed right from that moment. Fresh off a 23-25 stint in Miami, he somehow sold New York on being a quarterback whisperer for Sam Darnold. Thing is, his offense looked stuck in 2005. No motion, no play action, nothing creative. The Jets were dead last in 2019, averaging just over 17 points per game, and they were last again in 2020, falling to 15.2 points per game. Just awful numbers for an offensive guru. He also coached for one of the biggest memes in recent NFL history, where Darnold was caught on the sideline saying he was seeing ghosts. From that point on, you just knew he was done as a starting QB. Until this past season, anyway. After a 9-23 record, Gase was fired and disappeared from NFL coaching. Turns out that calling yourself a genius didn't make it true. Remember when Jim Zorn was hired as Washington's head coach in 2008 with, let me check my notes, 0 experience even at a coordinator level in the pros? He somehow started 6-2, fooling everyone into thinking the accident hire was a genius. Then reality hit. A 2-6 collapse to finish 8-8, with red zone failures, poor third down conversions, and a defense sliding downhill. Year 2 was worse. The team went 4-12, with management stripping his play calling duties mid-season. Then against the Giants, down 24-0 before halftime, Zorn called the infamous swinging gate fake field goal. Players ran into each other, the ball rolled loose, and the announcers mocked it live on national television.
I have never seen that play when you have a chance to get something on the board before the half.
Yeah, that's not a great look. Washington fired him at 12-20. Moving on to number 7, and Matt Patricia seemed like the ideal hire. 14 years with the Patriots, Super Bowl defensive coordinator, 3-time champ, and a supposed genius. Detroit gave him full control, expecting some pretty big things. Instead, his defenses just got worse. Veterans demanded trades, rookies regressed, and practices turned into boot camps everyone hated. Meanwhile, Patricia bizarrely lectured a reporter about posture in a press conference. While his team was collapsing, players trashed his game plans, and fans were booing louder every week. He was fired mid-season in 2020 with a 13-29-1 record. The defensive mastermind left Detroit with pretty much the worst defense in team history. The Lions sacked 2 head coaches in 2000, then hired Marty Mornhinweg, hoping he would be able to turn things around. With solid credentials from San Francisco's West Coast offense, Matt Millen wanted him to modernize the Lions' attack and bring them into the new millennium. What followed was 2 seasons of insanely bad football, and one moment that fans will remember forever. The Lions went 2-14 in year 1 and 3-13 in year 2. Mornhinweg's final record was 5-27, among the worst in NFL history. But those numbers aren't what people remember about him. They remember November 24th, 2002 against Chicago in overtime. Detroit won the coin toss, standard procedure across the entire league, take the ball and try to score. But Mornhinweg had other ideas. He chose to kick off, gambling that wind conditions would help his defense get a stop. The Bears drove down the field and kicked the game-winning field goal. Mornhinweg never got the ball back. He'd given away his team's biggest advantage for wind conditions that didn't actually matter. That's the kind of epic fail that's got to put you on the list. Sorry, Lions fans, but we're sticking with you again for this one, and you already know what's coming. Rod Marinelli came to Detroit as a legit defensive guru. He'd spent 10 years coaching Tampa Bay's defensive line, including their Super Bowl run where that defense was just ridiculously dominant. The Lions brought him in to fix their broken culture and terrible defense. Instead, he gave them the most embarrassing season in NFL history. Marinelli's Lions went 10-38 over 3 seasons, but 2008 was special for all the wrong reasons. Detroit became the first team ever to go 0-16 in a 16-game season. No team had managed to lose every single game since the NFL went to 16 games in 1978. Detroit's defense ranked dead last in yards allowed, their turnovers were historically bad, and opposing teams scored at will. Fans wore paper bags with 0-16 on them. Players quit on plays. And Marinelli's specialty, which was supposed to be defense, remember, became the worst unit in the league, conceding over 32 points per game. Detroit fired him after the winless season. The defensive expert had created the worst defense in franchise history. So you're probably wondering who could be a worse hire than that, right? Well, let's move on to number 4, Nick Saban. Yeah, the Nick Saban. College football legend Nick Saban. He showed up in Miami as one of the hottest coaching names in America. He won a national championship at LSU in 2003 and was supposed to bring the Dolphins back to glory. But he lasted exactly 2 seasons before everything fell apart. The disaster started with one decision that changed NFL history. Miami needed a quarterback and had 2 options: Drew Brees coming off shoulder surgery or Dante Culpepper coming off a knee injury. Their medical staff cleared Culpepper but failed Brees. Saban chose Culpepper, and Brees went to New Orleans where he won a Super Bowl and made the Hall of Fame. Culpepper was basically finished. His numbers tanked, he couldn't move, and Miami's offense collapsed. The Dolphins went 6-10 in Saban's second year, and there were rumors floating around about the Alabama coaching job. When reporters asked directly, Saban literally said that he wasn't interested in it. But 2 weeks later, he quit and took the job anyway. Miami collapsed to 1-15 the next season. Saban had wasted 2 years, passed on a Hall of Fame quarterback, and lied to everyone on his way out. Some coaches get one shot to prove they can't do the job. Josh McDaniels somehow got two. He showed up in Denver as Bill Belichick's golden boy. At 32, he was the offensive mastermind who'd helped turn Tom Brady into a legend. The Broncos gave him a playoff team, but he immediately started breaking everything. First move, he wanted to get rid of Jay Cutler, their Pro Bowl quarterback who'd just thrown for over 4,500 yards. That blew up their relationship and forced a trade to Chicago. Then he drafted Tim Tebow in the first round in 2010 and never really did anything to develop him. Denver's offense tanked with Kyle Orton as the starter, and players started questioning everything McDaniels did. The final straw came in London when his staff got caught videotaping the 49ers walkthrough. Pretty much Spygate all over again. He got fired after going 11-17. Then in 2022, the Raiders hired him anyway. He was fired mid-season in 2023 after another locker room revolt. McDaniels proved twice that being Belichick's assistant doesn't make you Belichick. But let's stick with the Raiders for a minute, because in 2007, Lane Kiffin was just 31 when Al Davis hired him to fix the team. The youngest coach in franchise history, Kiffin came from USC's high-powered offense with zero NFL experience. I mean, technically he did spend some time with the Jags, but that was in a quality control position. The problem started right away. Davis wanted Jamarcus Russell first overall in 2007, in a draft where you also had Megatron, Adrian Peterson, and a bunch of future Hall of Famers on defense. Obviously, looking back, he became the biggest bust in history, but at the time, it wasn't a controversial pick. One guy who didn't like the pick, hated it in fact, Kiffin, but he had no power to stop it. Then Russell was a disaster, the Raiders went 4-12, and Davis and Kiffin started fighting through the media like kids. In September 2008, Davis called a press conference, set up an overhead projector like it was 1987, and fired Kiffin while reading accusations off a screen. He called Kiffin a liar and accused him of breaking NFL rules. The whole thing was completely ridiculous. Kiffin went 5-15 and never got another NFL shot. Davis hired him to bring change, then destroyed him for trying to change things. But some failures are so spectacular, they become legendary. And that's exactly what we've got next. Hugh Jackson walked into Cleveland talking like he was the answer to all their problems. Cleveland handed him the keys to everything, complete control to rebuild the franchise however he wanted. Jackson went 1-15 in year 1, then pulled off something that seemed impossible. He went 0-16 in year 2. That's 1-31 over 2 seasons, the worst coaching stretch in modern NFL history. The Browns turned into a joke. Well, more than a joke than they already were anyway, and Jackson became the poster boy for complete failure. But midway through that winless season, Cleveland still wanted to extend him, at least according to Jackson himself. So the Browns were facing the worst coaching record anyone had ever seen and decided to double down. They finally fired him halfway through 2018 with a 336-1 record, and honestly, he's the perfect coach to wrap this video up with.